welcome you all to the fourth session, which is the third technical session of the evening for today.
We hope you have had an enriching experience of the world of HR in the previous sessions. Now, to begin this session, I would like to introduce the moderator for the session, Professor Devi S. Saini. May I request you, sir, to please come on the dais. Mr. Devi S. Saini is a professor and chairperson of Human Resource Management at MDI Gurgaon. Mr. Devi S. Saini is a professor and he has studied at Delhi School of Economics and Faculty of Law, Delhi University. He is a certified global professional in human resource management by the Society of Human Resource Management, USA. He has published many papers, book chapters and management cases. He has been a consultant for 2 global companies on Indian cultural context and employee behavior. He has done many programs in people management, employee engagement, strategic recruitment and selection, managing labor laws and contract labor. He was elected as one of the top 10 thinkers out of 50 nominations decided by the MTC Global, which is a Bangalore-based NGO. Sir, we are privileged to have you on our campus today. Next up is our first panelist for this session, Mr. Jagat Singh Rathore. So may I request you to please come on the dais. Mr. Jagat Singh Rathore is a certified master practitioner of NLP, timeline therapy and hypnotherapy. He is certified on various psychometric tools. He is an organizational development practitioner and consultant. He focuses on co-creating systematic change and improving organizational effectiveness through custom-designed interventions in the area of leadership, team excellence, change management, organizational cultural change, and whole system transformation. Over the last 10 years, he has worked with various clients across various industries. Sir, we look forward to your presence in our campus today, and we would hope to have an enriching experience with you. Thank you.
The second panelist for the event is Ms. Nalina Suresh. Ma'am, I would request you to come on the dais, please. Ms. Nalina Suresh is an XLRI alumnus with over 2 decades of experience in the talent and leadership space as an HR business partner at GE, Domino's and Godrej, and then as a business leader in organizations consulting and executive search space since the last 12 years. She is currently the Executive Vice President and Industrial Practice Leader at DHR International. Her talents are not limited to the corporate arena alone. She is an active sports person, having played district level basketball. Further, she works closely with a not-for-profit organization as a coach and an advisor. Ma'am, we are honored to have your presence in our campus today, and we hope to have an enriching session with you. The third panelist that we have is Mr. Ashok Bhattacharya. Sir, may I invite you on the dais, please? Mr. Ashok Bhattacharya again is an XLRI alumnus. He has worked in companies like GE and Pfizer, and from the last few years he has been an academician. So we are very thankful to you for coming today. Now over to the moderator, dear Devi Saini sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Professor Pandey, distinguished invitees, my co-panelists and participants. As you know, this session is devoted to a strategic view of diagnosing what all is going around in the area of people management. Both how academics look at it and what consultants are doing. How I have thought of using these 90 minutes is that I take about 3-4 minutes for introducing some of the themes in academia which we are deliberating, where the research is focused, And then we invite the three learned panelists. They speak for about 12 minutes each. And then I will make a short presentation. And then we have question and answer. This is how we are planning. Quickly, I just would like to say that the whole research has got dichotomized on two broad models of strategic people management in the last 20 years or so. And they are called the Howard model and the Michigan model. The Michigan model is also called the instrumentalist view of people management. And the Howard model is called the empowerment view of people management. Lest this sounds jargonful. Instrumentalist is hard and empowerment is soft. And today the paradigm seems to be shifting towards softer and softer because companies run out of strategies and they think that they could compete through people. So they are busy scrambling to search innovative ideas as to how to retain people, how to retain talent. And that is how this Howard model or the empowerment model has come into so much of prominence. In fact, 1990s in Europe it was said that empowerment is the elixir of 1990s in Europe. And it ignited a lot of passion amongst performers, and performances went up exponentially high. So this is one area where academics are talking about. Then there is an emergence of a gold-collared worker who is powerful. He is not on the receiving end like the usual worker who is on the receiving end. And we find this worker in knowledge operations and in software companies, search engine companies, and even otherwise in R&D. And this gold-collared worker is getting a lot of attention of the researchers as well as the consultant. And the gold-collared worker is idiosyncratic, and he or she wants working conditions as her own terms. Wants to come at 12 o'clock without shave, in chappals, not wearing formal dress, wants to work from home, and so on and so forth, and is prepared to walk away the moment she is not satisfied. This is another area where research is going on. And then there are a lot of talk on engagement, employee engagement, because you cannot think of performance, exponential performance, and high performance work system unless your people are engaged. And engagement is not just satisfaction or motivation or commitment, it is one step ahead. And as I'll show you in my presentation, in India, the engagement level is terrible. That's a global survey. And India, probably the lowest one is India, and that is a cause of concern. And I don't know how the panelists address that issue, if they at all. And then there is a lot of focus on vision and values. And in fact, rather I would put that as number one. You should know that where you are going and what values underlie all what you are doing. And strategy is intertwined with people management, and it is not just simply people management. And a lot of strategists are now talking about people issues, and they think that unless you build collaboratively by involving people the values of an organization, you will not be able to operationalize your people management strategy. In fact, there is a company, JetBlue, and it took 2 days to arrive at 5 values, and they are doing wonderfully well, and they are adhering to those values, and one and all. So values are no more hung just at the back of the receptionist. The leading companies today are giving a lot of focus on values and juxtaposing them with vision. And then we have talent management, a lot of work going on, and lastly, human capital management, where the focus is on measuring. Till yesterday, HR said, you can't measure emotions. You can't manage people's psyche. But that is not acceptable today when everything is measured. And so Harvard has started a course on human capital management, and I was seeing it has a 65-page course outline, you can imagine. So how much is the concern for this measurement? This is the academic perspective. And then in the consulting, I'm consulting with an automobile company for the last 3 years, trying to sensitize its 147 first-line managers as to how they can keep the company union-free. So far we have succeeded. This is the largest of the 3 plants of this company. And they have unions all around, but fortunately there is no union in this company for the last 10 years, and this plant's cost is 40% lower than the other 2 unionized plants. So my understanding of consulting issues in people management, if I'm not wrong, though I think newer perspectives will be brought by the panelists, is that how do you engage your people? How do you create an exuberance in the life of your people, an excitement in the life of your people, and how you take on issues from home and not just at work, and how do you extend it? And so far we have succeeded in this project which I am connected with, and this is what the company thinks, that can we sustain this non-union model? You have to excite your people. So with this, I think let us have the 3 panelists. I think we invite the lady first, Nalina ji, and for about 12 minutes, and we can have questions at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Saini. A very good evening to all of you. It happens that this is exactly 20 years since I graduated out of business school. So, making the connect with all of you, I'm trying to capture my 20 years of learning into a few minutes that I'm going to spend with you all. So, look forward to a very interactive, engaging evening today. If 20 sounds like a round number, I'm just going to toss some more of them to you. Of my career, it's kind of an equal divide, being as a practicing HR manager and as a business consultant, coincidentally about 10 each. And one more ratio which again kind of prompts a discussion on today's theme, about an equal number of years with global multinationals as much as with Indian corporations. So since the other sessions since morning I guess have been focusing on, is there a difference or it's all the same between Indian companies, global corporations, and here we're talking of between academicians and consulting. So I think, that it calls for a lot of deliberation, challenging each other's thoughts, and probably that's what's going to make this even more a stimulating session. Before I go into details, let me just quickly explain what I do and what is the industry that I belong to, because it's actually used by 0.1% of the working population, so it's not very commonly seen. So, one would recognize a brand like a GE or a Escorts or someone sitting here. But what is executive search all about? So we do very strategic leadership hiring, both in the profit and non-profit area, typically for board level business leadership and very, very critical game changer roles in organizations. So that being the backdrop, you'll be able to relate to some of the examples that I give to explain some of the perspectives that I'm sharing. I'm going to touch upon a few examples which can then reflect into some of the themes, largely around the context of corporate ownership, Indian versus global and so on. And I'll link that back to an example. One of the organizations that I hired for, we had to get 3 critical strategic people who would work together as a team in India. So we got the chief operating officer from South Africa, the head of projects from UK, and the technical head from Australia. And guess what? The client of ours was an traditional Indian organization. So what do we call as cultural integration? In fact, who makes the changes? The people who came in or the organization which chose to bring them in? So it's about, and this is a question for you all because you're graduating out in a year, 2 years, with an MBA degree, and some of these questions have been discussed. Which is the way to behave? What is the kind of cultural difference in these places? So it's a question you could think for yourself, and I'd love to hear answers of what you think is the cultural makeup of such an organization. To give you a small example, this traditional Indian company, one of the gestures they did, and just to give you a stronger flavor, there's a Marwadi group, one of the most successful groups in India. Typically the cafeterias are vegetarian, but then the kind of people they had hired, even their morning breakfast, they are used to having sausage and bacon and omelette. So they created a separate cafeteria where these people could feel at home because it was kind of a campus life for them. So, and many more examples of practices just to assimilate the people. There's another one that we're doing where again, it happens to be an Indian client. We need to hire someone who speaks Spanish and to be based in North America because their client market is Spain, while the business primarily is headquartered in the US. So these are few examples to give you a sense that I think globalization has gone to such an extent that it's more about how you understand the business of where you work and how you perceive that, or you do not perceive that there is a difference in the work ethos where you are engaging people. And as HR leaders, and more of what I'm going to talk about, you will notice more and more that I'm going to talk, it's not HR per se, but how closely you understand culture and business, that you will start making a big difference where you work. So shifting focus to you all, I think you all are a very privileged lot, and I'll tell you why for more than one reason. Of course, I mean, you all have the vision of people like Dr. Vats, Professor Pandey, and some of the others, with whose tutelage, of course, this institute has been set up. And then you have a very eminent governing board, and I'm sure they must be visiting you off and on, or at least sharing their thoughts with you. That definitely is an advantage. And another huge difference between when I graduated 20 years ago and now, I think you all are getting into the industry at a time when the economy has no option but to only go upwards. So in a sense, new kinds of roles are going to get created, new kind of opportunities. Some of the traditional structures are going to get challenged simply because the global ways of doing work are changing. Some of the examples that I shared with you. So I would encourage the students out here to go with a perspective of assimilating. One of the fellow speakers from the previous panel spoke about assimilate, soak in all that you got, because that will then give you a perspective which you can call your own. Not be biased or completely swayed by what you heard or what you read in your business school, but what you've actually experienced. Some of the points which I would urge you all to focus on, in addition to your area of specialization, whether it's HR or marketing or finance. And I think these are going to be predominant factors which will have an influence on the kind of industry which develops, and for which your acumen to think and share your perspectives will become imperative. 3-4 critical areas which I'm going to talk about. Interestingly, some of those are even woven into your curriculum in some form. I noticed that you all have a course on a certificate program in family managed businesses. Not too many business schools have that. And there was also something on bottom of the pyramid. So these are programs which is actually real life necessity, if I may, to seek and hunt business opportunities. Bottom of the pyramid can't be, emphasized, more all the time, because that is where, if you look at our own, the situation in our country, 70% of the revenue opportunities actually sit over there. The arbitrage in terms of employment, employable population in the country is actually sitting there. If we can tap that, the GDP growth, interestingly, is always higher in the rural sector. That's another sector. Incidentally, rural is definitely not bottom of the pyramid at all. In fact, they sit on more cash than what we in the cities have. Just that it's not visible to the eye because most of it is cash transaction, which is something that the government is trying to change in various formats. In fact, this whole program of micro banking, etc., is basically to get that cash in, so that it's circulated for better economic growth for all. And a third very important factor would be the environment consciousness. Whether it's in the area of urban development, whether it's in the area of tapping solar energy, whether it's in the area of looking at how to integrate the rivers for better, development across the country. Or if you look at some of the countries which are sitting at, in Europe particularly, which are sitting at sea level. So, 1 centimeter and, half the main cities could go underwater. So these are aspects in the course of studying as a business manager, as an MBA student. My personal suggestion would be to emphasize on these aspects and continue to look at the HR implications, continue to look at the financial implications. So environment, rural development, bottom of the pyramid opportunities. Each will have a very different approach in skilling. Each will have a different approach in terms of how you communicate what you do. These are not taught in boardrooms, these are not taught in classrooms. These have to be experienced on the field. And the best way to experience is go and do it yourself. If you get opportunities even during during the course, go ahead and seek those opportunities. So these are my initial thoughts on this session. The corporate perspective largely, but then I'm also going to do a little exercise, a little quiz over here, primarily to emphasize the fact that personally I see no difference in the way HR is treated in global corporations or in Indian businesses, so as to say. So here I go. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to call out a few examples. For each one, I'd like you all to just raise hands of whether you think this example that I'm going to illustrate is from an Indian business group or a global multinational. Just for the sake of, if there are some stereotypes which we believe typically happen in a certain kind of an organization, this is just to see whether we are on the right track. Okay. So here's one example. In this office, people can come in jeans and casuals all days of the week. Everyone watches cricket matches together in the cafeteria, can have music playing all the time, the music of their choice at their workstations, get to interact with celebrities often, and often get passes for major music festivals and concerts. Any guess, how many hands for, is this an Indian company? Okay. And how many hands for, this is a global company? All right. The answer is this is Hindustan Times. So, yeah, one of their businesses. Yeah. Okay, another one. In this company, there are no assigned workstations. You can carry your laptop and go and sit wherever you want to. And whoever you think you need to work closely with on that particular day. This could also be in cafeteria, and in this organization there's more than one cafeteria, so that everyone doesn't have to be huddling in the same place. Any guess? Indian companies? How many for Indian company? Okay. And how many for global company? Okay, this time I guess we got it right. It's a global company. This is Philips. Just one more example here. Every employee in the department narrates a unique story about another colleague which no one knew about. These are shared in monthly team get-together evenings. This is part of team building at the workplace. Again, Indian? Okay, I think you all have figured it out by now. And, okay, and how many think it's a global company? Global as in non-Indian. Okay, so it's an Indian company. This is Aditya Birla. And very last example, I mean I could go on and I could take it offline as well. All the products of this company are displayed in the reception area, near the reception. Employees could go and spend time actually using the products and checking them out. In fact, use it the whole day and give feedback to the product development. Okay, so last one, multinationals. How many think it's a multinational? Okay, yeah, this is Nokia in its heydays. So answer is basically what I'm trying to indicate is people practices are really determined by what's the vision of the leadership and what's the consistent vision which HR people certainly play the key role over there in making it consistent and not just in pockets. But best practices exist everywhere. So it's not one kind of an organization or the other. Thanks. Look forward to more queries as we go along. And thank you, Professor Singh.
Okay, thanks everyone for having me here. Thank you, Professor. Before we start on this, my harangue on this, can I ask you guys who are sitting out there, how many of you actually aspire to have a career in HR? Okay, so the rest of you are just here to watch us. That's good, it's all right. So if I may ask you just before I start on talking about what I have in mind, what do you think you're going to do when you get into HR in business? What's going to be your role? You'll have to shout it out. You don't have mics. Team building? Anything else? Hiring. Sir, you were saying something? Aligning people. Great. Good job. So just wanted to get a sense of where we are. I'm going to start at this from a slightly different way. Because as OD consultants, we are in the business of organization development consultancy. And the way I look at it is, it's got to be something which is very practically implementable. So my advice to all the people who want to get into HR, please look beyond just recruitment, engagement and all of those things, and start thinking about how you can be a strategic partner to the business. The way I see it is a lot of HR people and young people especially fall short because they don't understand the business. Now you're supposed to be there as a support function to enable the organization to be better at whatever they do. If you don't understand the business, how are you going to support them? So that's a question to keep with you. So you cannot hide from the business. You cannot hide from saying, this is sales job, but this is marketing job. It's all your job. Is that good enough to start with? Right. So before we came in for this session, I thought I'd speak to some of my clients who I've been working with over the last year and ask them what are the challenges they face, rather than me anticipating and saying, as word of God, here's what I think your problems are. So they came up with 3 very interesting things. They said the 3 things we struggle with is, 1, it's about retention and attrition. So attrition at the lower levels because people leave quite often, and how to retain the best talent. The other thing they said was it's about leadership because people don't actually complete the leadership journey within the organization. So they'll start and at some point they'll leave. Or we'll induct someone at the middle of the career and they will not be able to go forward. And according to all of them, the reason for all of this was because they don't fit in with the organization culture. So I see all organization efficiency as an interplay of all these 3 things. So there's the organization culture, which is your base. And on top of that, you've got to have some kind of leadership which is aligned with the organization and can also drive the teams without creating the silos. So that's where I'm coming from. Is that okay? Right. Now, the professor talked about something very interesting when he brought up the instrumentalist versus the Howard dilemma, the dichotomy that's happening. And it takes me back to something around 1966, where this gentleman called Frederick Herzberg came up with this theory of intrinsic motivators versus what we call now the hygiene factors. And when you're looking at the 2 of them, it's looking at 2 disparate things. One is about, are you motivated to do your job? Is the job satisfaction going up? And the other part of it saying, how can you reduce job dissatisfaction? And I think both of these approaches are addressing 2 different things. So the instrumentalist is looking at making your job kind of in a way which you feel more excited about it. You want to go out and achieve more. The work itself is so exciting that you want to do it. So regardless of the environment around you, regardless of how tough it could be, regardless of the fact that you're not even getting decent salaries, you still want to come in and work because it's really, really exciting for you. You're changing the world. So that's a pipe dream. The other side of it says, let's make it so comfortable for the people that they enjoy coming in here. They don't want to stay at home because the amenities they get in office are so great that it makes no sense to stay at home. Yeah? So that's the 2 things which we are always trying to balance. And I find in all our clients, they either go one way or the other. In India, we've largely gone the other way. It's always been about the stick. Whip them into shape, make sure that they work hard. We are probably one of the few societies where organizationally we are close to 100% utilization when it comes to our people. So when you talk about utilization, we are saying, if you have an 8-hour work day, do you come in at time, do you spend those 8 hours at work and go back or not? So if you do that, that's 100% utilization. But you need to also balance it by saying, how much of that time, those 8 hours, did you spend doing your core job? So that's a correct, better measure of your utilization. Even then, we are pretty high on that. The thing is that the higher your utilization gets, it actually adversely impacts your productivity. So is it really working out for us? We've got to find that balance. Now, most of the people in the organization we work with tend to look at the hygiene factors and say, let's give them more. And that will make them want to come back to office. And I don't think that's necessarily true. So yes, it's important to have sure that you've got your parking slots, you've got a good work environment. All of those are really important. But they only serve to reduce job dissatisfaction. They don't necessarily increase the satisfaction you have at work. And I think that is one of the things that the leadership needs to find in their hearts about figure out how do you really motivate the people to be feeling better about what they're doing. The job of HR, the job of, maybe we should look at the job of HR as going into two parts. One is the process part, one is the people part. And the process part could be something which is core HR practices. But can L&D step in? And that's a new division which we are seeing quite a lot of now. You've got the learning and development teams. Can they take care of the people? And if they take care of the people in a balanced manner, they can balance both of these parts. So the chief reason for people to feel satisfied with their jobs and want to come back for more has been increasingly found to be the sense of achievement they come in. And the key reason for them not to want to come into work is organization policy and admin, which includes, of course, your bosses, right? So we always have the old saying which says, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their bosses and want to run away. And it's quite true. This is a 66 study and it's still being proved. So you find it coming up in different ways. People will find different ways, different nomenclatures for it, but it still remains the same. So my approach and my team's approach when we go into any organization as OD consultants is to find that balance between the two. The way we find it is by looking at a combination of things. You can't just look at policy by itself and say, let's change it, and people will tomorrow feel very happy. They won't. So that policy needs to also be executed on the ground. And that's where you come into the whole thing about where does the culture fit in. If the culture doesn't allow it to happen, it's not going to happen. And building culture is one of those things that needs to start with everyone's job responsibilities. It can't just be one person, HR or the person who's the MD saying, I dictate this culture. So look at a very, very simple example. You've got the Delhi Metro which is running. All of you have used it at some point, right? Yes? Have you also been to New Delhi railway station? Is there a difference between the two? Are the same people who are traveling on the Delhi Metro the same as the people who use the railway station as well? So you get off on metro station, you go on to the railway station, you start spitting. You never do that in the metro station. Why not? Is it just the fear of the fact that someone will catch you and beat you up? That you will get a fine from the cops? I don't know anyone who's ever been fined by the police for spitting in the metro, personally. Yet no one does it. Because it's a concept, it's about building that kind of ambience that people want to look at. And that becomes the job of everyone. So you've got to have the policy which dictates it. You've also got to find ways of making it stick. What's in it for me as an employee? If I can't find that, I'm not going to work at it. So again, that's the way we look at our approach. According to me, the best approach, any intervention which you go into, must address all of these factors. And with different organizations, it's going to be different. So if you look at some organizations, they've already gone overboard on the hygiene factor. They've done so much for the employee. The employee is such a pampered person that they just want to sit back and take their salary and go home. Now that's the place where you need to crack the whip and say, come on, you've got to get incentivized to do things. Cut their salaries down. Make sure that they get more than 50% of what they're earning coming through incentives. But if it's the other way around, when you're looking at really hardcore industries that are driving everything through incentive, you need to get something going on the softer side as well. So I advocate, this is the way I look at it, I'm not an instrumentalist or a Harvardist. I look at a balance of both. And I think that comes from my background because I'm probably, in fact, definitely the least educated person in this room right now. My claim to fame is I was chucked out of my MBA course, which I'm really proud of right now. So I never really managed to complete any form of formal education. What I do have behind me is 3 organizations I managed to set up. 2 of them I managed to sell off successfully. And the third one, I'm just in the process of building. Let's see where this one goes. So I approach everything from a very practical way. And it may not be making much sense to people who are more learned than me, but that's the approach I like to take. All right? So that's enough for me from now. And I'm sure there might be some other questions which pop up from you guys. So happy to address them later. Thank you.
Okay. For all of us, my 2 previous panelists would have essentially presented to you what we as HR professionals or would-be HR professionals can look at in terms of the external world to manage and deal with. For me, the question is a little bit more different. And it perhaps comes from the long years that I spent with Professor Pulin Garg. It comes from there. That what really needs to happen to you internally as an individual, if you want to actually deal with the HR function or be a part of the HR function, is it something that you need to do to yourself in the HR function? Because we've all talked about the HR aligning, the HR strategy, we need to be part of the business, all that is there. But I think there was one question that comes to us at the end of it. When the penny drops, do I have the courage and the conviction to stand up for what I believe? And where does that really come from? And if you look at the HR roles that have actually happened in organizations today, the entire dilemma that we face in the HR function, and I'm talking from the perspective of having been on both sides of the table, so to speak, having been an HR professional and also now in the world of academics, perhaps comes from there. That is HR function a vibrant and critical function? I think Mr. Sen in his deliberation made that debate over. I think it's a debate that we as HR professionals shouldn't even get into and shouldn't want to get into, okay? HR is critical and it's a vibrant function, and let's nobody have any doubts about it. I think for all of us who got trained in an organization where we believed that HR plays a critical role, to instill us with self-doubt in the process is something which is absolutely demeaning to the soul of ourselves as individuals. And I think we don't need to do that. The second one, what do we do? Do we interpret HR or what's happening in the HR world as an academic by looking at what's happened in the past, or do we want to say what needs to happen in the future? More often than not, we as HR professionals and even HR academics, we have been guilty of trying to attempt to explain the past and not saying what needs to happen in the future. So, what I essentially would like you all to examine is that we need as HR professionals, if we want to play a strategic role in the HR function, that are we willing to take a value-based position on those so-called strategically upheld positions in the organizations. Because for us as HR professionals, we experience a lot of things that go around us that don't agree with our system. And having been trained in an organization where we spent a lot of time, there's one word that I picked up and which remains with me is, do you have the courage of conviction to push back? Or do you get pushed over? So as HR professionals, are we willing to push back? That's the critical question for me. Now, let's ask this simple question. What do organizations stand for? Do they stand for performance? Do they stand for profit? Or do they stand for corporate citizenship? Now, if I look at the dimension of corporate citizenship, then the dimension of organizational responsibility and acting in a society upholdable fashion, or acting in a manner which is relevant in the context of the society that we are operating in, becomes absolutely imperative. Now let's ask the second question. As in organizations, are we looking for driving individual excellence, collective excellence, competitive ferocity, or collaborative excellence? What are we looking for? Now, if you juxtapose one against the other, you'll find that a whole lot of problems that we as HR professionals face essentially rests with which meaning of the HR role do we actually lay anchor. If we lay anchor with corporate excellence, then the meaning of HR is completely different for us. But if we lay anchor with competitive ferocity, then there's a different kind of anchor that we hold. If we anchor on individual excellence, then it has a different meaning. So as HR professionals, that's a question we believe as academics, we need to settle it for ourselves. That where do we want to anchor ourselves? Logically, the next question that follows is it individual benefit maximization? Is it collective benefit optimization? Or is it professed values and propriety that we stand for? The same question that comes to my mind, that I think what I'm trying to drive at again and again is that as HR professionals, please, if we are going to be managers of the future and if you want to build organizations which drive value and also create meaningful existence for people and meaningful return for investors, then it has to be driven by professed values and propriety. And this is where I see the role of HR, we as academicians need to really drive. And I see this as our strategic role. Our strategic role is to maintain the balance between individual and organization greed and propriety in organizational actions. What we have seen in the past, over the last few years, give umpteen examples of what I'm actually standing for and saying here. Absence of it has led to horror stories of organization meltdowns and business leadership criminality. I need not name names because all of us are aware of those names. So it is the HR function that really needs to drive this balance. So if somebody asks me, what is the strategic role as an academic I would like HR to play? I look at this balance to be the role that HR really needs to play. Now, the tragedy is that this issue was settled quite a long ago. When Ulrich in the late 80s, early 90s suggested an HR competency model, he actually looked at that. We said HR needs to be a business partner, a change agent, an infrastructure expert, an employees champion, and a values custodian. These were the competencies and these were the things that Dave Ulrich actually talked about. And strangely enough, this entire model was developed by 450 CEOs who actually gave the advice to Ulrich saying what they expect out of HR. So where have we got lost? Now the outcome that flows out of that is very clear. I think we've talked about aligning HR, managing transformation process, all that has been talked about in all the presentations that have happened so far. What I would like to really concentrate upon are just two. Being the employee champion and being the values custodian. What do we see in organizations today? We have the quarterly result of a company being declared. You will have 50 financial analysts badgering TV anchors and the corporate executive. Why has the point gone down by 0.01% or 0.001%? Okay? What are you doing? And there's a complete plethora of badgering that goes on. Let me ask a simple question. Whose interests are they looking at? They are looking at the interest of the shareholders. Whose interest is the employee looking at in the organization? So is the championing of employee interests being looked after by HR adequately? We haven't done that. And consequently, we've left that space to union leaders. Let's ask ourselves this soul-searching question. We've actually left it to the union leaders. Then, values custodian. If something is going wrong in the organization, That's the point I again made out, that are you willing to stick out your neck and say that I stand for this, this cannot be compromised. So therefore, we in HR have really talked of HR to perform the technocratic role, but they have left the organization refereeing role and have abandoned it. What I as an HR academic at this point in time would like to see, that we actually pick up this organization refereeing role with all the vigor available to us. And that will actually drive HR to the position of where we really be the values custodian, and somebody is holding the organization from a meltdown cannot be anywhere else other than on the decisioning table of the company. Rest. So therefore, HR needs to stick its neck out and uphold values and propriety. Otherwise, I believe Martin Luther Jr.'s quotation would come true. People of ill will have used time much more effectively than people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic works and action of bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. We must come to see that human progress never rolls on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work. And without this, hard work itself becomes the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively and forever realize that time is always ripe to do things right. Thank you.
We have had a very enlightening discussion from the three learned panelists. Ms. Nalina talked about strategic leadership, strategic hiring. HR leaders need to understand business, tapping of rural markets, and environmental consciousness as some of the challenges. Mr. Rathore talked about looking beyond the traditional, what we call functional HR or transactional HR. In fact, it's a pity that the strategic interventions and issues have really not been articulated in our country in most business schools. Only in some, because of the influence of MNCs, where to some extent strategic HR is practiced, it is done so. And I think it was a very pertinent observation on his part, that if you really think that you are in this chaotically changeful world, you are going to get people advantage, you have to resort to these strategic interventions which are beyond recruitment and selection, training, and so on and so forth. He also talked of leadership. Then he talked of issues in exciting and motivating people, and probably the most important, building culture. I was intrigued by some of the points which he made, and I think I'll talk about that when I make this short presentation. Then Mr. Bhattacharya, I think, asked a very pertinent question which normally we people do not ask. And we shy away from answering also that question. And that question has been asked to me also several times by my alumnus students. When he talks of Ulrich's 4 roles, which have later on been modified in 2005 by Ulrich and Brockbank, retaining 3 and adding human capital development as the 4th role in place of change agent. The question is, all HR is focusing on what the boss tells. Boss means the CEO and the board. And they are short-termist. In the process, you don't perform your two roles which you owe to your employees, that you are employee advocate and you are employee champions. That is the reason why all HR in even private and public sector is called P&A is Panga and Adanga. This is how it is. And Dr. Pandey should not feel too happy because F&A, finance and account, is called final Adanga. Because, so you are there to say no, it cannot be done. You cannot go abroad. This is the rule. And this is killing us. Believe me. But at the same time, I'm proud of the fact that there are companies in this very country which are doing amazing. I'm going to give you examples of some. Because time is short, though we have some surplus time, and thanks to the two speakers especially, I would like to ask you one question. That in the last 5-6 years, we have had 6 or 7 murders of HR/CEOs by workers. Do we ever ask why did it happen? It happened lately in Maruti, where still 147 workers are still in jail. 500 have been discharged from service. I asked this question. This question was asked me by one of the anchors in a television interview when Honda violence took place. What happened? And I said, foolishness of the management. You can't manage your 1200 workers. Tata Steel has celebrated 75 years of continuous peace with 80,000 workers. Not a single strike in the last 75 years. 80,000 workers working in tormenting conditions in 9 locales, including coal mines and iron ore mines, and 100-year-old company. But surprisingly, we are not prepared to take lessons from that. We are not prepared to what Mr. Jagat told about the building that culture. We are short-termist on this. We start thinking of the present only, and we don't think what is across the tunnel and how these great companies have been built. And the whole world is praising us, but we ourselves don't take lesson. I don't know how many of you know that today Tatas are the biggest contributors to the GDP of UK. It's a matter of pride for all us Indians through those 3 companies they are running in UK. And this is how the long-termism, the viability, and never getting obsessed with the short term, these companies have gone ahead. I'll give some other examples also. Just in furtherance of what I'm talking, let us hear this 6 minutes video, which is very dear to me. I attended a program and where this was given to all attendees, and today I got it edited. I'd spent a lot of time with a photographer that if he could edit it and reduce it to 6 minutes, it was 30 minutes.
Definitely in the last 10-15 years, we took a program called that. If I look back on what has happened in Tata Steel, definitely in the last 10-15 years, we took a program called the Total Operating Performance with the help of a consultant. It had to do with doing small changes in the operations of the plant. And people used to sit down. Half of them were executives and half of them were workers. And then they will churn out, thoughts. And then they will experiment. They will fail. They will succeed. And you'll be amazed that over a 5-year period, we saved some 1,500 crores for Tata Steel just by this process. And we had an audited figure, and there was measurement system, and people used to submit every month as to what exactly happened and so on. 50% of the people involved in this program were workers. And this continuous improvement process, where these workers are involved in every single worker is involved in at least one continuous improvement act. As people who run the organization, we need to appreciate that innovative ability, leadership is to be found at all levels. We need to be able to nurture it. That's the job of a leader. Leaders are not born in Harvard or CEDEP or somewhere else. They are there with us. We need to unearth that leadership talent, leadership skills, and the innovative ability, from people. And I have often found the workers who are unbiased, who have no agenda, they have tremendous innovative ability. And I believe the more this country will go into manufacturing sector, the more, and the way this country is in terms of, so, unequal socio-economic situation, we need to unearth more and more of that worker power to be able to create, wealth for this country.
That's all. So what we see, Mr. Muthuraman raised three very important points. And that can be said to be the secret of the exponential success of this great company, which is the cheapest steel producing company in the world, if I'm not wrong. And one is that because of the cooperation of these so-called semi-literate and not white-collar workers, Tata Steel saved 1,500 crore rupees in 5 years. And we always undermine the workers. I was discussing a case with my MDI students, and I took the view in that case, the German managing director decided to build workstations where workers were empowered to take financial decisions. This is a Mumbai pharma company. And one of my students got very angry with me that how can you give power to workers? These are our prejudices against workers. But look at these workers, 1,500 crore rupees they have saved for this company. Look at what is the secret of industrial peace in Tata Steel. The second thing, I have never seen in my life a CEO talking this language in support of workers. Only a person with a large heart can do so. A real change master can do so. And that is how Tatas have seen to it that only a leader is, coronation only of a leader is done in Tata Steel, otherwise it will be disastrous, including Rusi Modi or whoever came. It was amazing to see that how one, each better than the other, how they took up people issues. And here is a CEO who I thought knows more HR strategy and HR models than I know or many of the HR vice presidents which I have met. Here is a CEO who is chiding his vice president HR that I don't want to look into this, what you are doing, because its importance is only 20%. Tell me, what have you done in creation of an ambience? And Mr. Jagat talked about that ambience, and this excited me. To me, the only duty and responsibility of HR is to create this ambience. What is this ambience? Where you feel a sense of dignity, pride. 2006 December, I was invited by Tata Steel to talk to all their employee relations department. I was so excited speaking, then I decided to stay there for 3 days, and I thought, let me write a case on Tata Steel. I was interviewing with a lady, she was from IIM Calcutta, 27 years in Tata Steel. I said, 27 years? Nobody stays more than 2-3 years. She says, what Tata Steel has given me, nobody can give. She says, no government organization, no private organization. And I asked, what is that? And she said, dignity. Tata Steel gives dignity to its people. If you heard Muthuraman, he was saying the same thing. You say something against the boss, your pant will not be taken off. You have the freedom to disagree. I was talking to some IAS and IPS officers in IIPA, where I mentioned something like that. And one IAS officer said, well, we can differ from our bosses. I politely told her, I can't differ with my boss in MDI, who is a colleague of mine. Because I'll think next time I'm going abroad, he's definitely going to put problems that no, under this rule you cannot. And I remember once I was going to teach there, it took 22 days for the approval to come. And I was keeping my fingers crossed that will it come before I leave. So this is how bosses treat their people. That's the real problem. And that is how they bring disaster to the organization. I was on the board of a management school, and one day this guy asked me, the owner, Dr. Saini, I want to make this to be a global school, and I want suggestions from. I used to be quiet, just to meet some friends. I thought, close by, let me go. Then one day I asked him, do you have internet on the table of your faculty? No, it is misused, so I don't prefer giving that. And I have kept some cubicles in the library. And he thought the faculty will see pornography in their room, so it is risky to give it to them in their room. I was so shocked. Then I asked him, do you have a register for your faculty? Do you monitor them in and out? And he said, yes. I said, can you think of gradually giving some freedom to them and not doing it so rigorously that you got 15 seconds late and like in factory workers you are treated? He kept quiet. Do you know what happened? The board was reconstituted and he removed me rather than the register. These are our CEOs. What is it? Control mindset. I will decide what you should do. Control mindset. And this is what is killing us. You will never be able to go ahead and become a leading company if you have this. In fact, I had some... has it come? Yes. Oh, sorry, sir. I will quickly rush through the presentation because I couldn't do it orally. Somebody should help me. Now this is the presentation. I'm making 3-4 points. First of all, this is the forecast for the Indian economy. 2050, we'll be in dollar terms, we will be the third largest economy. Here we are, $27.8 billion, and China is 44.5. This is in dollar term, trillion, sorry, not billion, and USA will be number 2. Okay, so this warrants what at the global level? A lot of people got very excited. In fact, there was another forecast which put India at number 1, 88 trillion in purchasing power parity, and China behind us, and then USA. But that was its purchasing power parity. And probably the things are coming up to the expectations. This forecast was in 2003. At that time, we were $598 billion GDP. Okay. Now look at our engagement. If you see, our engagement is here. Only 7% people are highly engaged, and 37 are moderately engaged, but most people are not engaged, 56%. The most dangerous bar is this green bar. Japan is worse. Some of you think that how Japan, that is a global company which conducted this. Japan is, but it's the dangerous bar is only 41. Global average is 24. Mexico is just 9. They are our competitors, Brazil and Mexico. So what can HR do here? And I think very pertinent question Mr. Bhattacharya asked, Professor Bhattacharya asked, and also Mr. Jagat asked very pertinent questions in this regard. Is this HR independent of the CEO and the board, or does the board decide the policy and they just carry it out? I think that's the crucial question, and you cannot charge HR only for that purpose. We have not given that independence to HR, and if we have, probably the professionals can think of switching over from the control and command mindset to the empower mindset. So this is one challenge to HR, since the Conclave talks about the challenges. To my mind, this is the most important challenge which we face today at the macro level. Ma'am talk about the macro level, and I think others also refer to the macro scenario. Now, what do we do then? What are companies doing? Companies which have lowest cost, Southwest Airlines, which is a usual example given all over the world, the case taught in all the business schools in the world. You all know that some problem. Okay, so this is Southwest Airlines, and 20% lower cost, has never had any accident. Okay, swear in the name of their people, employees will be provided the same concern and respect, caring attitude, which is that they are expected to share externally with every customer. This is Southwest Airlines, and this is what Engage has never, the only airline in the world which has never suffered a loss, and 20% lower cost. So it's not that by only bribing the employees through extravagant welfare benefits you can do so. You can really see what actually the employee wants. What is it which employee is looking for? This is Richard Branson, and what do they say? We have always had a policy that staff should come first and customer the second. We have our own heroes, HCL, Vineet Nair, employee first, customer second. In fact, I was also with him in San Diego 2011 when he spoke, and as an Indian I felt a sense of pride. 5,000 Americans were listening beneath Nair, and when he talked off, and there was a wow he created. And after that celebration of that idea, I think 2 years back, his package got increased from 4.4 crore, 5 crore to 8.5 crore. Today it must be much more. And I felt so happy that Indians have started talking of employee first. And that is the answer to all these problems which I was posing in the beginning. And you all know these bachchas, people call them, okay, Google. And you know the worth of the market cap of this company? 26 lakh crore rupees. If you start writing, more than 50% of you make a mistake how to write 26 lakh crore. That is the worth of this company. And Larry Page did not have money to rent even one room some 16, 17 years ago to start his company. His girlfriend said, why don't you start in my father's garage? And the rest is history. What do? You all know. Let me just show you. Everything ulta, out of box. You can bring your dog to the workplace. You can sleep, couches. You are encouraged to sleep. There are couches all over. And most HR men will write, anybody found sleeping on duty, they will be terminated. And believe me, I sleep every day in my room. Every day. 20 to 30 minutes. If I don't sleep, my whole afternoon is gone. That's my idiosyncrasy. But you make such rules for your end. So I said that if an employer wants to hire me and provides me these glasses and a cubicle, well, I would prefer to sit at home rather than join such an organization. Because I want that 20 to 30 minutes nap, otherwise my whole afternoon is waste. But nobody looks into that. Do you want results or do you want allegiance to all these rules? So you can sleep, and then there are massage parlors, there are 18 restaurants. It is not just a fashion to have these 18 restaurants. I suggested to this company which I am advising that can't we have 2 types of food? Though everybody eats. They say, no. They'll ask for too many things, We don't want to critically look at it as what is the logic of this. 99, I was in Mexico for 15 days. When I returned, I lost about 4 kg weight. Even though Mexican delicacies are very well known, but I got some smell and I found it very offensive, and I almost starved myself. I was searching for Indian food, and which I virtually did not get. So what is this? It's not fashion that they are providing you 18 restaurants, because it's a cosmopolitan company, and food is free, and whatever you like, you can eat. But this is just a hygiene factor. This is not the motivator, this welfare. People think that this is the motivator. The motivator are other things. Google is known for innovations and people centricity. So they have both the things. If they withdraw this, the whole structure of the company will crumble, because this hygiene factor can demotivate very well, as you all know. You know who is the most powerful person in this video, in this picture? He probably most of you will say he looks to be everybody is looking at him. And he looks to the most bichara, isn't it? And you know who is he? He is that 26 lakh crore rupees man. Will you ever see a CEO sitting like this? And he looks very uncomfortable also. And this speaks what? This speaks that a flat organization. And this speaks that the so-called small employees, they have so much. Look at their business model. Look at how you create that ambience, I think, which Mr. Jagat talked about. The ambience, how do you create that ambience? That's the crucial thing. And if you saw Muthuraman's video, he's talking 80% of your time, if it does not go into ambience creation, then this is no HR. And I want to tell you, all these consultants, what they are trying to tell you is the 20% thing. Okay? All that. And they don't want to know what matters. And there was a research, and which came in Time magazine, and there were 10 factors. And 12,000 boys and girls, they rated which is the most important. Salary was 6th for men and 8th for women. And the top factor which they wanted to be focused on was interesting work. Both interesting work, challenging work, job enrichment, job design, and what is naturally the ambience in which you do that work. Therefore, HR, it's the duty of HR when you are placing in line with the line people, that you try to understand what your people want and then you deliver it. I want to say that it is not just all good management. It is not just bribing people. Look at the results. Both results from America and UK showed that Fortune 100 best companies to work for, the average returns were 10.32%, and Russell 3000 was 4.02, and S&P was just 3.71. Look at the data from Britain that the 3 best companies to work for, they had 3 times the return than the FTSE 100 firms, and 4 times over. And this you can see that if you treat your people well, then you know what they pay you. And this is called psychological contract. I don't know how many of you have heard about psychological contract. Do you know the employment contract and psychological contract? It is from the body language, from the eye to the eye. Something like that, Ravina Tandon's Akhiyon se goli mare. You see from the body language what waves are coming from your employees and what waves you are giving to the employee. That's a lot of research going on psychological contract today, what companies are doing. And what all you saw in the Google Speaks were all the psychological contract companies are creating. Quickly, this is a US company. I will just show you just for 2-3 minutes what companies are doing. This is a US company. It's a hospice care providing company. They invited me to write a case 2008, and I was there for 15 days. And I was interviewing one of the nurses, because you had doctors and nurses, 12,000 doctors and nurses. And she said this, sometimes I wonder why I came to this place so late. She was so excited by the ambience which the company had created. This is Tata Steel, which you all know, 75 years of industrial peace. And they said, we also make steel. Just see the ingenuity. We also make steel. So what else do? They care for their people, they care for the community. And that has 33% of their profits are going into CSR. That is what matters. And that's a message for the industrialists and the CEO that matters if you want engaged employees. So total care, history of cooperative IR, ethical working. This is J.R.D. Tata when he was not the MD, and once people wrote to him and they said that there is no electricity, how children study. He told the board, Mr. Chairman, tell me what is happening in Jamshedpur. My people and children are boiling. Children cannot study. People cannot sleep. I have received hundreds of letters and telephones. Is the house of Tata so helpless? I want your board to discuss and find a solution before we take up any other item for discussion. And I want to tell you, there and then they decided to set up an electricity generation company, there and then, and which is still working. And this is how they decided. If it was in government, maybe 7 years, the file is still moving. And that is how they could demonstrate to the world that they care for their people. This is a very small company. In fact, this is a SME, okay? And its name is Classic Stripes. It has come 3rd, 4th, 5th in the best employer companies survey. It has shamed multinational companies. And look at the motto, dignity at work is the motto. Believes in valuing every individual, giving people their due, freedom, respect, opportunity, backed by lots of training. And one feels a sense of pride when one looks at such companies. And how does it get number 3 or 4 status? It is their employees who vote this company for that status. It is the respect which they have, and they also share they have a diversity management policy for women, etc. This is a company which is, you all know, Prudential UK. It invited some people, including me, for auditing its HR strategy, I think 2009. And I found that the HR guy was the next most important person in the company after the CEO. And he said, Dr. Saini, we can't compete through price. We can't compete through salary. We compete through culture. And that's the same thing, analogous to what Google is doing. I asked one guy, how do you feel working here? He said, oh, great. You can come drunk here. That shows that how you can be courageous to give power. Most of us are very stingy. We don't want to give power. They will misuse. We say, sab sale dande ke aare koi kaam nahi karna chahta. This is what we think. And this is not at all what Tata Steel does. Tata Steel thinks and believes that people are sweet, they are wonderful, Even the murderers, if you see that film, Do Aankhein Bara Haath, how the real story, how murderers can also be transformed. So this is what, this is Jack Welch, as you all know, for the first time, In Search of Excellence said that people era has arrived. That was 1982. Jack Welch's company was not selected by McKinsey for studying in that basket of companies in 1982. He felt belittled. He was waiting for the report, and when he saw the report, he completely changed. From a control and command man, he became a people person. And when he took over GE, it was 13 billion. When he gave up office, it was $500 billion company. And he says that these 7 points were my strategy. And out of these 7 points, 3 related to people: culture, flatten the organization, eliminate bureaucracy, empower your people. And vision, of course, is strategy: raise quality and efficiency, operations, eliminate boundaries. And you can imagine, so in all these cases, it is people, people, and people. Now, lastly, I say, how do you, as an HR professional, you are not independent. In India, why is it so that HR professionals do not have that much autonomy? My understanding is, it is because of the power distance in our country, number one, is very, very high. Very high power, unlike, say, Denmark, where it is very little, and even USA, where it is lower, and you can afford to disagree. That's one. And secondly, the unemployment and underemployment is also very high, that there is no HRD for workers. You take workers for granted. And wherever you do that, all these 7 or 8 incidents, I don't have time to narrate, where the killing has taken place, happened this way. It is only few imaginary companies, visionary companies like Tata's, who never thought like that. So people are trading into the powerlessness of your rank and file. Companies are doing that. Even multinational companies come here and they give the lowest possible wages, okay? And there is a double-facedness in their strategy. But probably they are compelled because everybody else is doing, so what can you do? There are so many automobile manufacturers, so what can you do? Others are doing, therefore you are doing. So therefore, I think very important question which Professor Bhattacharya asked is very right, that how do you do your role of employee champion and employee advocate? So those of you who are aspirant to become HR managers, this dilemma will hound you always, that do I sustain my values and my ethics, and I play my role, and company tells me to break the union or whatever unethical things you do. Somehow I thought that now is the time for panel discussion. We have about 20 minutes as per the schedule given to me. We started at 3:40. I thought that since we were to debate on the challenges, I thought, I don't know if the panelists will agree, in view of what I've said, how far HR leaders have the freedom to decide empowerment, HR interventions. Can you, as an HR leader, decide that, look, on the basis of my expertise, we must introduce this HR empowerment intervention, or do you have to take the permission of your CEO for that? So this is number one. Can we take, is this okay? That is in the question answer after the panel discussion. Am I right? You can quickly, if you think so, you can quickly. Yes, I'll repeat it. Do HR professionals have the autonomy to decide the empowerment HR intervention, that you want to introduce something which you did not have because you want to engage your people, and this is a challenge? Or is it that you are always told by the top, the board and the CEO, no, because which is in control mindset, and you don't have the freedom? This is number one. I think we can take 2 instead of 3, and probably then we can have the questions.
Okay. I don't know whether I'm the right person to answer this question, being an academic at this point in time, but maybe I'll switch hats and try and answer this question, although with your permission. Okay. I'm of the view that in my own experience I have seen that I can narrate a real incident in my own life and in my own career, which perhaps will answer the question that is getting raised. This was quite some years back when I was a mid-career executive in HCL those days. And I was the divisional HR manager of one of the divisions of HCL. And there was one employee in Calcutta who had an illness. And he had to be at that point in time, and let me give you the background of HCL at that point in time, it's important that you know. We were not large as we were, as we are today, or as HCL is today. We're a small company, and virtually at the every month end, we had to go and check in the bank what was our bank balance to decide whether we were in a position to pay salary or not, and we actually insisted that salary needed to be paid every month on the correct day. And so this employee was not well, and I got a call from Calcutta that he needs to be sent to Australia for treatment, and those days the expenditure was coming to something around 3 to 3.5 lakhs. And I still remember I was sitting in Siddharth building in Nehru Place, that's where our office was, and I was walking down the 6th floor of Siddharth building trying to catch Mr. Nader to get a response for him on what needs to happen. And as I was walking up, they were busy in a meeting, and usually secretaries are supposed to be roadblocks. And his secretary was a roadblock for me, said, no, Mr. Nader is very busy, you can't meet him at this point in time. But I was persistent, and I went about twice, thrice, 4 times, maybe the 5th time I remember. And, but the secretary stood her gun and said, no, you can't. But perhaps Mr. Nader saw me for inside because the office was glass at that point in time. He came out of the room and he asked me a question. I can never forget that question in my life. He said, Ashok, what's the problem? I said, sir, this is the issue. He looked back at me and he answered. He has a very terse way of talking. He looked at me and said, Ashok, take this as an instruction from me, that henceforth on employee matters relating illness, never come to me for an approval. Take it as approved. If I have to sell the company, good enough. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that what actually makes the company change and what actually allows the HR personnel to insist with the CEO to make that. And I keep on coming back again and again to this question because that is where I operate from, is that unless there is some level of conviction within you that this issue needs to get addressed, you will never take it to a logical conclusion. Your idea would be to meet the first roadblock and say, I tried, but it couldn't be done. And that's the shift that needs to happen from in HR, where I'm talking about projecting the values perception that needs to happen in an organization from the HR point of view. Thank you. I hope I've answered the question.
Would you like to say something?
Sure. I'm going to address it from 2 angles. One is going back to my very first job, and I think that itself set the stage for me not to have this dissonance in my mind at all. Godrej and Boyce, my boss, the VP of corporate HR, was a business person. He used to run one of the businesses of the company and then became the HR head for the group. One of the most sensitive, people-centric individuals that I've seen. In fact, now today he runs a foundation in Hyderabad. He was part of the Bairaju Foundation. He set it up actually. First and foremost, big difference, and that it's a large group. It's a traditional group, blue collar workers, the factory environment. The biggest difference that I saw was people did not really. I mean, the term used at that time was personnel manager, right? It wasn't really HR, but almost every plant you walk into, the kind of respect that they had And this does not come from, you demanding it. It came from the management. It came from Mr. Jamshid Godrej and his leadership team, etc. So that was my first experience. So I think something which sets an impression on you in your very first job and what you see is kind of tends to make you believe that that's truth, and you kind of uphold it wherever you go because you think that's right and you've seen it proven elsewhere. It's still, they may not be doing business-wise exceedingly well today because of the nature of industry and what they've not invested in, but arguably it's one of the best people-centric organizations ever. So coming to the point, what you see, what creates an impression for you when you're a clean slate altogether, I think tends to be what you will nurture and you will also advocate. If you had a bad experience, it takes you that much longer to get rid of it before you create something else. My next organization, GE again, and Ashok was, in fact, Professor Bhattacharya this time. He was my boss in one of the GE companies that I worked with. And across different GE businesses, I think we consistently saw one of the most people-centric organizations. So having said that, even in a place where I would imagine a GE manager going any other place in a position of authority will create that environment around, and push back is it's a virtue that all of us were taught. So I think it's, long story short, each of us can be the change agent. We do not have to succumb to the environment, nor do we have to be influenced by what we see. If we have the courage of conviction, go ahead and do it. Push back. You will be the change master in creating the right environment wherever you work. You may be 22 years old, but doesn't matter. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a quiz question. Anyone who gets the right answer gets an internship with my company. Is that okay? So the question is this: who is Sukumar Sen? Who is Sukumar Sen? Great. So let me ask you an easier one. No internship this time, okay? Who is TN Seshan? Yeah, a bit late, right? So Sukumar Sen was the first Chief Election Commissioner of India. TN Seshan we all know. For a lot of people it's news that there was a Chief Election Commissioner before TN Seshan. And the point I'm trying to say is, no one gives you authority. You've got to have a stand, take that stand, courage of conviction like all the panelists have said, and then take your stand. Once you grab that authority and make that change, people will remember you. And if you don't have that courage of conviction, you won't. Now, in my experience working with my clients, I find a lot of people in the HR function who have that courage of conviction. They'll stand up, they will face up to the CEO and make it happen. And others will just stop. So I guess it depends on you. That's my point on this.
Okay, thank you very much. I had thought of initially 3 questions, but I think one is enough. We should give more importance to what the audience is inquisitive about. But so far we have 3 questions. You can send more. We have about 8-9 minutes for the session to close. The first question is why the HR department is so authoritarian, so that it is not liked by others. Partly this was talked about. I think probably, I think you should answer this question because you are not an HR person. Am I right? Well, because you are in business, and then what is your perception about HR in your organization? Or you look after HR as well?
Okay, we do not have a traditional HR structure.
No, HR function.
HR function.
Not HR people or department, but HR function is there in all organizations.
With due apology to other knowledge firms, HR is not the most influential or required to be the most influential function because most people manage their own businesses, whether it's business consulting, whether it's executive search.
So you are doing your own HR, that is?
Yes, each of us.
Not HR department. You are doing your function, yourself.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So we manage our book of business, and we have HR, one HR per geography. So all of Asia Pacific has one, which is in Hong Kong. So I'm not sure whether this example will be
that you do not have HR, because you also agree with the questioner that is authoritarian and does rent seeking.
Can I just read the question again?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Sure. HR depend. I think in the context of knowledge firms, by and large it's more of self-managed teams. The reason also being that, I think the accountability to our clients is so fast, so highly, it surpasses surpasses the standards that one cannot afford to compromise. And per force you tend to work homogeneously as a team because that's what you need to deliver to clients. HR is more of an enabling function in knowledge consulting firms. So I don't think I've done justice by answering to that particular question in my firm, but what I could attempt answering and keeping in mind multiple of my clients for where I have consulted. Frankly, in my experience, I haven't seen HR as being authoritative to the extent of intimidating. It has been more in the question of authority has been put to better use in terms of encouraging people to speak up. And I can think of multiple of my clients when I make that statement. Two of them cases in point, enormously integrated. In fact, one does not even make the distinction between HR and business. One is the Aditya Birla Group and the Mahindra Group. And it again cascades from the top. On the same platform, in both cases, the group HR is part of the board, and it cascades right from there in terms of every business leader is trained mandatorily as a coach. He or she himself mentors people. So it kind of becomes integrated with the rest of the population, and it's not a standalone function any longer. That's been my experience. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We have a question for Mr. Jagat.
Oh, right. So let me just read this.
This is your question. You can read it out.
So the question is, how did the knowledge gained by you in the field of psychotherapy and especially hypnotherapy applied or proved helpful in the corporate environment? Zero. Short answer. It didn't help at all. Is that okay? So really, these are things which I was doing at an early stage of it. Did it help me in a way of understanding people better and understanding their motivations? Yes. But does it play an active part in the interventions we do? No, not at all.
Professor, would you like to answer that question? I lost the question. No. Oh, yes, yeah. Yes, please. It's about international HR, why it is popular when countries' cultures are different.
I guess the question reflects the aspiration of the person who's asking the question, that is HR going to have a global implication for us in terms of managing and dealing with our roles or spreading our roles into managing processes globally? I'll take you back again into one of my own experiences, if that can answer that question. By this time, HCL had become a global company. Okay, it was HCL Technologies. So we were operating from Australia to California, to California. So that means it meant operating from 4 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the night. Okay, that was the kind of work span time that we dealt with. Initially, it gives you a good feeling that you are really managing a global process. But sometimes after that, you feel to say, "Apni dal roti shayad theek hai." Okay, and you wanted to get back into your own into your own natural process, your own natural country, and manage that whole thing. I mean, that's my experience, the way I would look at it.
There are two questions directed to virtually me. One is that how do you develop business vision in people, in organizations, and vision in the mind? Once you have developed the vision, the employee asks, इसमें मेरी हिस्सा पत्ती क्या है? मैं क्यों इस विजन को सब्सक्राइब करूं? It is the duty of the top management, what is called internalization of that vision in the psyche of every employee. If you see Indian organizations, in more than 90% of organization, vision is something which is hung behind the receptionist. And I'm very angry at organizations. And I want to tell you, one of my very close friends, strategy friend, he agreed with me, more than 70-80% of organizations don't know what is vision, and what they are writing is mission only. I went to one organization, I won't name because there are some people associated here. I was so shocked. They wrote such a long vision which was wrong. And it's a very old institute, management institute. I was so shocked. So the question is, write your vision very simply, very simple vision. It is not necessary that you have very long vision. And I say that a vision has no meaning unless the Mali mowing the lawn understands what is the vision of this organization, or a cook cooking the meal in the canteen knows what is the vision of this organization. That is precisely what is called internalization of the vision. And Peter Senge talks of mental models when he talks of learning organizations, that it is the duty of the HR to change the mental model of its people and to see that everyone is involved in personal mastery. But the problem is, we fear people who are masters, who are our subordinates. We fear them. We don't want to take people better than us, which is so much believed in our country, though we don't allow people to become masters, number one. And if we do, I think we must invest into changing this mental model of people, and so that they are able to change the perceptions of people that we are not exploiters of people, but we are here to develop real, genuine partnership with you. So this is a humongous task which the HR at the top has. Internalization of the मेरी हिस्सा पत्ती इसमें क्या है इस vision में, so that I subscribe to the vision of the organization. If I find that this vision is something to do only the shareholders, then it will be very difficult for you to internalize the vision. And therefore you can say, you can relate, you can say incentives for the workers, you can say that there will be an ESOP, it could be related to dignity when it goes up or whatever way. But it is a very difficult task, and this is the reason why in India it is not taken very seriously. It is just taught in management schools that you have to internalize the vision of the organization in the psyche of the people. So that's my answer to this. And the second question is, should we have organizations without union? There is no problem at all. The whole world is moving towards that. Though I have the data, union data, when globalization started in England, 1979, with Margaret Thatcher, which came to be known as Thatcherism, the union density in UK was 56%. Today it is 23% in UK. In developing country, the union density has not declined, but in almost all countries, barring Scandinavia where the decline rate is slow, but in most Western world countries, they are feeling the heat and unionization has declined. And today, organizations are pursuing what is called a neo-unitarist strategy. It is also called the IBM strategy. IBM has had manufacturing locations, but it has never had a union. Today it has something like 5 lakh workers. It pursues neo-unitarist strategy. And I am saying, even in India, the gold-collared worker or this new worker who is so savvy with the internet and mobile phone and all, does not want to join union. Believe me. It is always the fault of the management, always, 100 out of 100 cases, that the worker thinks of joining the union. What did they do in Maruti? They thought that in 2000 we saw the workers, we kneeled them down, and this is the way we will tackle the Manesar workers. This is a total flawed strategy of Maruti. And they never realized that these are all young workers. Young workers in your generation, they don't take nonsense. And then they are willing to form a union. That is how the situation came. Fortunately, in this company which I told you, for 10 years the union has not come up with 4,000 workers. And you can pursue, therefore, a non-union strategy. It's also called union substitution strategy. And I have a model in which I call it as a neo-unitarist strategy. I've said it at public forums that like the worker has a fundamental right under 19(1)(c) of the Constitution to form a union, employer has a right to pursue a no union strategy. But in the process, the employer should not commit unfair labor practices. In fact, if I was a Supreme Court judge, I would have put the entire Maruti top management behind the bar, because they committed unfair labor practices which are clearly given in the industrial disputes law. If you commit this, 6 months imprisonment. The whole world was watching, media was watching, government was watching, union leaders were watching, and I was wondering what was happening. The Supreme Court and High Court take suo moto views of things, and which shows that the whole state agencies, they're all anti-union today, because that is antithetical to globalization. And it is believed that probably maybe 20 years from today, we will have a union-less world, because this generation, the upcoming, they want to work. They are not there to form unions. They want to get what they deserve. But the problem is, in a country like ours, we have a large proportion of people where you need social welfare, because we are not a Western country, and probably so unions will remain relevant for them. Otherwise, market is a bloody beast, and it will devour these people. That's the issue. Thanks. I think I will go to the.
Thank.
Can you allow me for half a minute?
Yes, please.
Just sharing with the vision of late J.R.D. Tata, 6th Feb 1978. I heard him speak about he said that it should be a people's car, people's vehicle. He did not name Nano. The conference was held in Taj Mahal Hotel, which is on Mansingh Road. So I thought, let me share with you. He had the vision. Of seeing what the Indians would need, cheapest car of their own. So thanks a lot for allowing me, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an enriching and interesting session. Now I would like to call upon our Director General, Professor I.M. Pandey, to felicitate our panels and also to hand over the mementos to them. Thank you so much to our panelists and our moderator. Now I would like to call upon our Principal Director, Dr. Ratan Sharma, to give the vote of thanks. Yes, sir.
Vote of thanks. Good evening, friends. I know this is the last part, but very privileged and proud, in fact, an act which I am to perform, because I think the whole conclave has been so exciting, so challenging for every one of us, that we wanted this to continue. But I think somewhere things have to come to an end. First of all, let me begin with the last session, Professor Devi Singh, to begin with. Devi Singh Saini. In fact, he made it very interesting as a moderator, and also gave a lot of knowledge in terms of various issues And then the speakers that we have it, Professor Ashok Bhattacharya, our colleague who was with us from the academic side. Madam, she was, in fact, she spoke from the consultancy point of view. Nilima, wonderful, in fact, the way the consultant should have looked at it. And Mr. Jagat Rathore, an entrepreneur, and also the way he looked at from the practical aspect of the HR, the practices and the challenges that we have it. So thank you very much, in fact, to begin with, because you are the one very excitement, in fact, among the students and also every one of us. We were trying to look at it, various expenses these panelists have got it, and also Dr. Devi has got it, in fact, in this. To begin, in fact, if you know the topic per se, the theme per se, HR perspective and challenges, I think this was very aptly put by our own colleague, Professor Ashok Bhattacharya, who is the convener. So give a big hand to Professor Ashok Bhattacharya. Very interesting, he is also the speaker at the end, but also the convener, and he in fact has conceived, designed and put everything in this, the whole place. And in fact we were working out as to how we should try to help him out. Everybody indeed was there with this. So last, I won't take much time, I know, right? I understand you, okay? So, but still I have some very important duties to perform. First of all, to my convener, HR Conclave. And I must thank our own management, Dr. S.C. Vats, chairman, who is not here, but he provided a lot of support and the guidance. Vice chairman, who was present in the very first inaugural part, he was present and this provided all support. And our own Director General, Dr. I.M. Pandey, gave a big hint since he is present. His guidance has always been there for conducting this sort of a conclave. We got, as an institute, very interesting panel and also the speakers. To begin with, we have Mr. Keval Handa. I think he is the person who really set the stage for this conclave per se. If you remember, just to refresh your memories, he said it that I think HR has to aligning people with the business is very important, people with the organization, the culture which is very important, the performance. And he talked it's a beyond performance, in fact. If you want really to have the performance, you have to have something else beyond it. So that is what a very interesting part which I personally liked, because he has been a thorough, not only conceptualized but also put things in practice. And he set the ball rolling in the very first inaugural session. I think he is not present, but we are thankful to him. He could, in a very short notice, could come and spend time with us and with such a lovely, interesting presentation. Then the next technical session, we were having a professor from Ahmedabad, Professor Vora, and she was wonderful. In fact, you know it. I mean, you read her books, and the panel that we were having it. That is what Mr. Chakravarti, Mr. Pradyuman Pandey, and Neelam Dhaka, all in their own rights, wonderfully, in fact, spoke about the very important theme that was Indian context, the organizations. The second technical session was being moderated by another eminent speaker and also a researcher, in fact, from IIM Ahmedabad, Professor Sunil Maheshwari. Speakers, of course, were Mr. Abhay Kapoor from Escorts, Mr. Anmol Singh from ITC, and Mr. Angri Sen. It was really wonderful. And I think they provided us a lot of learning in terms of various issues which the practitioners face in terms of HR practices. So it was a great thing. In any way, for the last technical session, I think they were here, and I once again thank you all, in fact, to be present. But my, in fact, responsibility does not end here, because this has come to fruition, I'm sure. It's a very exciting and challenging conclave that you have really have in the recent times, the second conclave of HR that we have it, but it is a work of so many people. As I said it to you, it is being conceived, designed by our own colleague, Professor Ashok Bhattacharya, with Professor Mr. Faraz. Please give a big hand. Faraz, where are you? So that was a wonderful, in fact. First, of course, was done by the Professor Rakshita. That was the first one. This is the second I'm talking about. Don't remind. So I'm sure we have not forgotten Professor Rakshita. This was the first she started with, but that was last year. And I think this is the second year we are talking about. We also have very important people behind it. I'm sure no function can be there without people. And let me first of all say, Indira, she did a lot of support. Professor Indira, this is great. She's a colleague. She's a colleague, but all logistic supports being provided by Indira. कहाँ से आना है, किसको आना है, कहाँ जाना है, क्या करना है, डाइस पे कैसे करना है, all sorts of things provided right by her and her team. And team, of course, you saw in terms of Bhanu, we were having it. I think if they are here, great, if not outside. So please do mention. I mentioned their name because they should not, because it's a HR practice, I have to be very careful about it. Bhanu was there, Uma was there, right? Khushi was there, Meghna was there, and Lalita was there. So there were three. And also Sushil, in fact, who was providing all sorts of support. The people, those who were there, they really provided support to us. So the whole faculty, in fact, I can't forget, where is Sharad? He's there. I can't forget Sharad. DG said something and we have to do it, and I'm just to coordinate. So I said, Sharad, you do. And he was doing right from many days. In fact, he was working on it. Thank you very much, Sharad. In fact, you provided a lot of support to us. Now, my thanks are to the students community. I can't forget. ये सारे students जितने भी हैं, there's a lot of team efforts which has gone into it. सभी लोगों ने मिलके काम किया. I think it has been a wonderful. Those who received right from the beginning, from there, they worked yesterday, they worked today. In fact, they are still working. I think they have to work later. All, in fact, names are many. I'm sure you will not mind. But everybody, I think they have worked. They have anchored very well. It has been a very nice journey for every one of us for learning, in fact, from the students' point of view. And, in fact, I can't forget for whom this conclave was, the audience. आप गेस्ट थे, आप लोग आए यहाँ पर. It has been a wonderful, in fact. Your guests, you are here. This has provided us a motivation. This has also tried to really tell us as to, yes, I think something can be successful because with your gracious presence when we are having it, particularly from HR and also our own students, they are in large number. In fact, I don't see that they are one in that way because there are these many only. Right? So please don't get confused. This is all we were thinking. These are the guest, seats initially. 3-4 rows were for the guests, outside guests. Rest were our own students. We invited only a few of them, which are from PGDM. And we have a very limited number of seats. In fact, this is great. So I'm so thankful to every one of them. In fact, they provided this support. I must not at the end forget the administrative support being provided. People, those who are not present here. Administrative support is being provided by Registrar Brigadier Saxena. Please give a big hand. A big hand. He is not there. I think somebody needs to communicate to him that we are thankful as a Delhi School of Business because we will be expecting many more such things, because we keep doing such things and we need a lot of support, in fact, administratively, otherwise this is not possible. Whatever you find on the reception and otherwise, this would not have been possible without, in fact, his involvement in his active participation. So with this, I thank you all indeed for having patience, listening to the speakers, and also making our day, we say conclave, this wonderful. Thank you once again. Thanks a lot.